On a cold, rainy morning in the heart of London, Emily Parker walked through the slick, crowded streets. Her thin coat was soaked from the drizzle, and her shoes had holes that let water seep in with every single step. She clutched a small bag to her chest, a bag that held everything she owned in the world. The sounds of the city swirled around her, distant traffic, car horns, and the hurried footsteps of people rushing to get out of the rain. Emily had been on the streets for nearly 2 years, ever since she lost her job at a small cafe near King's Cross. The world felt too big, too harsh, and yet she kept walking, always hoping for a miracle, or at least a small kind gesture from someone passing by. Her stomach growled, a familiar ache she had learned to ignore. Today, like every other day, she needed to find something, any odd job, any chance to earn a little money, or even just a scrap of food to get her through. As Emily passed a busy market square, her eyes caught something unusual. Half buried in mud near a lamppost, she saw a luxurious leather wallet, its edges still shiny despite the rain. She bent down, her hands trembling as she carefully picked it up. The wallet felt heavy, much heavier than just coins and notes. She opened it slowly, her breath catching in her throat. Inside were crisp banknotes, a few credit cards, and an ID card with a photo. The name read, Oliver Bennett. The face was familiar, someone she'd seen in newspapers and on social media. He was a millionaire businessman known for his lavish lifestyle and his appearances at high-profile charity events. Emily's heart raced. She had never seen so much money in her entire life. For a fleeting moment, her mind spun with possibilities. She could keep it. With this money, she could rent a small room, buy herself some food and warm, dry clothes. She could finally leave the streets for good. Her fingers hovered over the crisp bills, but deep down, a small, persistent voice whispered, "This isn't yours." Emily knew, almost instinctively, that taking it wouldn't bring her real happiness. She remembered her mother telling her, years ago, that honesty was far more valuable than any amount of wealth. But the streets were unforgiving, and sometimes survival meant bending the rules. She hesitated, completely torn between the overwhelming temptation and the voice of her conscience. The rain fell harder, and Emily hugged the wallet to her chest, looking around nervously. The square was a blur of motion, people rushing past under umbrellas, hardly noticing her huddled figure. A few street performers played music nearby, their tunes drowned out by the roar of the city. A lump formed in her throat. She thought about her life on the streets, the nights spent shivering under bridges, the days spent begging for spare change, the constant gnawing fear of being ignored or, even worse, taken advantage of. This wallet could change everything. But she also knew that returning it might change her life in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. Emily made her decision. She would follow her conscience. She tucked the wallet safely inside her coat and started walking towards the part of London where she imagined the wealthy lived and worked. Her steps were cautious. Every puddle reflected the city lights in distorted, shimmering patterns, and every passerby seemed to loom larger than life. She clutched the wallet tightly, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope mingling in her chest. Her mind raced with questions. Would he be angry? Would he offer her a reward? Would he even notice her at all? As she walked, she remembered bits and pieces of her past. Her father had disappeared when she was young, leaving her and her mother to struggle. Her mother had taught her how to survive, how to be brave, and most importantly, how to always do the right thing, no matter how difficult it was. Emily whispered softly to herself, "I have to do this. I have to return it." This was more than just about money. It was a test of her character, a chance to prove to herself that even someone like her, someone the world had forgotten, could do something good. After what felt like hours navigating the wet, crowded streets, Emily arrived at a tall, modern glass building. She recognized it from a magazine, the place where Oliver Bennett conducted his business. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped into the lobby. The air was warm and smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee, a world away from the cold, damp streets she had just left. People in expensive suits walked past her, casting curious glances at her ragged clothes. Emily felt both invisible and completely exposed at the same time. She hesitated at the reception desk, unsure of what to say. A kind-looking receptionist smiled at her. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. Emily swallowed hard, clutching the wallet in her hand. I think this belongs to Mr. Bennet," she said softly. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, well, he's expecting some documents, but I'm sure he'll want to see this," she replied. She took Emily's hand and guided her towards the elevator. Emily nodded nervously, feeling like she had stepped into a different world, a world she had only ever seen from the outside. As the elevator doors closed, Emily took a deep breath. She looked at her reflection in the glass panel, her face pale and wet from the rain, her eyes wide with anticipation. She thought about the streets she had left behind, the cold nights, the constant hunger. But she also thought about the possibility that this one small act of honesty could be the beginning of something new. Her palms were sweaty, but she tried to steady herself. "Just hand it over," she whispered to herself. "That's all you need to do." When the elevator doors opened, Emily found herself in a spacious office with enormous windows overlooking the city. Oliver Bennet was there, standing by his desk, reviewing some papers. His sharp suit, confident posture, and calm expression made him seem untouchable, like a character from a storybook. But when he noticed Emily standing there, holding out his wallet, his eyes softened with genuine surprise. "You found my wallet?" he asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and admiration. Emily simply nodded, extending the wallet toward him. "Yes, sir. I wanted to return it." Oliver studied her for a moment. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, the slight trembling of her hands, and the simple truth in her words. "Thank you," he said, reaching for the wallet. He noticed the mud stains and the rainwater droplets and smiled faintly, appreciating the effort she must have gone to in such awful weather. Emily felt a strange mix of relief and nervousness. She had done the right thing, but she had no idea what would happen next. Oliver gestured for her to sit down. "Would you like some tea? You're soaking wet," he said kindly. Emily hesitated for a second, then nodded, grateful for the warmth. As she sipped the hot tea, she realized that this encounter was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Here she was, a woman who lived on the streets, sitting in the office of a millionaire who could have easily dismissed her. Yet he was treating her with kindness, a simple gesture that made her heart swell. The conversation continued, and Oliver began to ask gentle questions about her life, her struggles, and her dreams. Emily answered honestly, her voice soft but steady. The more she spoke, the more Oliver seemed genuinely interested. She noticed that he didn't judge her for being homeless. Instead, he listened with respect and empathy. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in a very long time, and it made her feel seen, not just as a poor woman on the streets, but as a person with worth and dignity. Suddenly, the sound of rain hitting the windows seemed to grow louder, like a drumbeat marking the beginning of something new. Emily realized that this small act of returning a wallet had opened a door she never thought she could even approach. She felt a flicker of hope, a fragile but growing belief that maybe, just maybe, her life could actually change. She didn't know how or in what ways, but she felt that her courage had been rewarded in the simplest, most human way possible, with acknowledgement and kindness. As the rain continued to fall outside, Emily and Oliver shared a quiet moment, neither of them rushing to speak, both feeling the weight of the encounter. Emily thought about the streets, the cold nights, the hunger and the fear, and she knew that she had taken a step beyond all of that. She had chosen honesty over survival, and in return she had been met with compassion. The city seemed less hostile now, the streets less lonely, and the future a little bit brighter. Before Emily left the office, Oliver handed her a small envelope. "This is for you," he said. "Consider it a thank you, and maybe the start of something better." Emily accepted it, her hands trembling. She didn't peek inside. She just smiled, a small but genuine smile that reached her eyes. She stepped back out into the rain, clutching the envelope and the memory of Oliver's kindness. As she walked back toward the streets she knew so well, she felt different, stronger, braver, and a little more hopeful than she had been that morning. And so, on that rainy London day, a homeless woman named Emily Parker returned a Millionaire GS wallet and unknowingly stepped onto a path that would change her life forever. The crisp London morning air carried the faint scent of rain-soaked streets and coffee from nearby cafes. Emily Parker woke slowly, her body aching from the hard bench she had slept on. Her thin, worn blanket had done little to keep out the chill. Her gaze turned to a small envelope that had arrived the day before, lying neatly on the corner of the bench. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. This small piece of paper held the promise of something different, something beyond the cold streets she had known for too long. Carefully, she unfolded the envelope. Inside, a note written in neat, flowing handwriting caught her eye. "Thank you for your honesty. If you ever need a chance, come to my office today at 10. Alongside the note was a small amount of money, enough for a warm meal, maybe even a bus ride. Emily's heart raced. Her life had always been uncertain, unpredictable, and harsh. But this felt like a chance. A door had opened, and though she couldn't see what lay beyond, she knew she had to walk through it. She dressed slowly, pulling on the only clean clothes she had. Each layer felt heavy, yet protective, a small armor against the world. Her shoes were worn, and her coat carried the faint scent of yesterday's rain. Yet Emily felt different. There was a spark of anticipation, a pulse of hope that reminded her she was still capable of change. She brushed her tangled hair with trembling fingers, whispering to herself, "I can do this. I have to try." By 9:30, Emily stepped out into the bustling streets of London. The city moved around her in a blur of umbrellas, rushing feet, and the distant roar of traffic. She clutched her bag tightly, every step echoing the nervous rhythm in her chest. The tall buildings loomed above her like giants, casting long reflections in puddles scattered across the sidewalk. Today, she wasn't just another face on the street. Today, she carried purpose. As she approached the sleek glass tower where Oliver Bennett's office was located, Emily felt her pulse quicken. The towering structure reflected the cloudy sky, gleaming even under the persistent drizzle. Inside waited a world she had never belonged to. A world of polished floors, sharp suits, and whispered power. She hesitated at the revolving door, taking a deep breath before stepping through. The warm air hit her like a gentle embrace, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. The receptionist greeted her with a professional smile, recognizing her from the previous day. "Mr. Bennett is expecting you," she said. Emily nodded silently, her hands clutching her bag as she followed instructions toward the elevator. The ride upward was smooth, but Emily's mind was anything but calm. Reflections of herself in the mirrored elevator walls showed a mixture of anticipation, fear, and determination. Her heart beat so loudly it seemed to be the only sound in the room. "You are brave enough to step in. That is enough," she whispered to herself. The doors opened, revealing Oliver Bennett standing near his expansive office window, the cityscape stretching far beyond. He looked up as she entered, his expression softening into a warm, welcoming smile. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice calm but carrying genuine warmth. Emily's throat tightened as she offered a small, uncertain smile in return. I wasn't sure if I should," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliver shook his head gently. "I thought you might be nervous, but honesty like yours deserves recognition. That's why I asked you here." He led her to a small table by the window, where the little sunlight behind the clouds caught the raindrops on the glass. "I know life hasn't been easy for you," he began, his voice soft and deliberate, "and I don't want to overwhelm you. but I'd like to offer you a small job here in the office. Nothing difficult at first, just tasks that anyone could manage. You don't have to accept, but I wanted to give you the choice." Emily's eyes widened. A job, in a world so different from her own. Her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her bag. Fear clashed with hope, uncertainty with excitement. The streets had hardened her. Every encounter had been a test. Yet this was something different. She had never been treated with such patience, such respect. Here was a man, a millionaire, offering her not charity, but an opportunity. It was almost unreal. After a pause that felt like an eternity, Emily nodded. I'll do it," she said softly, almost afraid to speak the words aloud. Oliver's smile broadened, genuine and reassuring. "Good, you'll start today," he said, guiding her toward a small desk tucked into the corner of the office. The first hours were overwhelming. Every sound, the hum of computers, the ringing of phones, the chatter of colleagues was a reminder of how unfamiliar this world was. Emily fumbled with documents, unsure which file went where, her hands shaking slightly. Yet, with each passing task, she began to adapt. Oliver observed quietly, offering guidance when needed, never condescending, never rushing. He seemed fascinated not just by her work, but by her determination, by the courage she had shown simply by being here. During a mid-morning break, Oliver brought her a cup of tea. The steam curled gently, filling the air with a comforting aroma. "You've done well so far," he said kindly. Emily smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just from the tea, but from the recognition in his tone. For the first time in a long while, she felt valued, not just for what she could do, but for who she was. As the day moved on, Emily began to notice small details about Oliver. He wasn't the cold, distant millionaire she had imagined from news articles. He cared about the people around him, about fairness, about helping when he could. Conversations revealed his interest in charity, in improving the lives of those who struggled. Emily listened, feeling a spark of admiration, a connection forming in the space between them. The world outside the office, the streets she had walked for so long, seemed distant now, almost unreal. Tension rose subtly as Emily worked through tasks she had never encountered before. Misfiled documents threatened to slow down a deal, and she hesitated, unsure how to fix the error. Oliver noticed her pause, but instead of scolding, he stepped closer and guided her gently. "You've got this," he said, his voice steady. Emily corrected the mistake, her hands steadying as confidence replaced fear. Oliver's eyes met hers, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of effort, courage, and integrity. The afternoon light began to fade, softening the edges of the office and casting long shadows across the polished floors. As Emily prepared to leave, Oliver walked her to the elevator. "You did very well today," he said quietly. "I know it isn't easy stepping into a world so different from your own." Emily's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she replied. The elevator doors closed slowly, the hum of machinery a gentle lull as she reflected on the day's events. Stepping back into the rainy London streets, Emily felt the familiar chill, but it no longer weighed as heavily on her. The city lights reflected in the puddles, the umbrellas of passers-by, even the distant sounds of traffic, all felt less intimidating. She clutched her bag, the envelope tucked safely inside, and walked with a sense of purpose. She had faced fear, stepped into the unknown, and found a courage she hadn't realized she possessed. That evening, Emily sat quietly in her shelter, staring at the envelope. Slowly, she opened it, revealing a handwritten note from Oliver. "Your honesty is rare. I hope this job is just the beginning of something better. You have potential beyond what you know." Tears formed in her eyes. Not for money, not for comfort, but for acknowledgement, respect, and the simple act of belief in her. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Truly seen. The rain outside continued to fall softly, tapping against the window in a gentle rhythm. Emily lay down, thinking about the streets, the cold, the hunger, the struggle, and about the day she had taken a step beyond survival. A step into possibility. A step toward something more. She realized that courage wasn't only about facing fear, but about choosing hope even when the outcome was unknown. If you or someone you know is struggling with difficult circumstances or mental health challenges, please know that help is available. There are organizations and resources ready to offer support. The morning sun struggled to pierce through the gray clouds above London, casting a soft, muted light over the wet streets. Emily Parker walked briskly toward the towering office building, her coat pulled tightly around her. Her mind was buzzing with anticipation. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of her worn shoes, but because she carried with her a new sense of purpose, a feeling she had never known on the streets. She had returned Oliver Bennett's wallet, and now, unbelievably, she worked in his office, a world completely unlike her own. And yet, despite the differences, a quiet connection had begun to form between them, subtle but undeniable. When Emily entered the office, Oliver was already there, reviewing documents near the large window that overlooked the city. He looked up and smiled warmly, his presence calm yet commanding. "Good morning, Emily," he said, his voice carrying an ease that immediately put her slightly at ease. Emily smiled back, her nerves softened by the familiarity she was slowly building with him. "Good morning, sir," she replied softly, feeling a flutter in her chest she could not quite name. The morning passed with the usual rhythm of office life. Emily sorted files, answered basic calls, and observed Oliver as he moved through the space with such natural confidence. But today felt different. He spoke to her more, asked her questions about her thoughts on small projects, and even invited her input on minor decisions. Emily noticed the way he listened, truly listened, and how he valued her perspective, even though she came from a world so unlike his own. There was a quiet admiration in his eyes, and she felt a mixture of pride and cautious curiosity. During the lunch break, Oliver suggested they step into the small garden terrace behind the building. The rain from the previous day had left droplets sparkling on leaves, and the air was crisp, filled with the scent of wet earth. Emily hesitated for a moment, unused to such spaces of quiet luxury, but she followed him. They sat on a bench, the soft sound of distant traffic blending with the occasional bird call. For a while, neither spoke. The silence was comforting, almost intimate, and Emily felt a strange warmth in his presence. Breaking the silence, Oliver said gently, "I'm impressed by how quickly you've adapted, Emily. Not everyone would manage so well in a world so different from their own." Emily looked down, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the strap of her bag. I try my best," she said quietly. "The streets, they teach you to survive, but this is different. It's overwhelming at times." Oliver nodded knowingly, his gaze softening. "I understand. But you have something rare, a perspective, honesty, and courage that most people in my world don't possess." Emily's cheeks warmed. She wasn't used to such praise, especially from someone like Oliver, someone whose life seemed untouchable by the struggles she had faced daily. And yet, the way he said it, with genuine respect and calm admiration, made her feel seen in a way she had almost forgotten existed. It was a strange and thrilling feeling, a connection forming quietly between them, subtle but persistent. As the afternoon unfolded, Emily began to notice small gestures in Oliver's behavior that revealed his growing interest. He would pause to ask her opinion on matters unrelated to her job. He would make sure she had enough tea, check if she was warm enough, and occasionally smile at her across the office, just long enough to make her heart skip a beat. Emily found herself glancing at him in return, feeling a mix of curiosity and hesitation. She wondered if he noticed her as more than just an employee, or if she was imagining the connection entirely. Emily's attention was soon drawn back to her work when a complex filing task arose. Documents needed organizing, cross-referencing, and careful attention to detail. Oliver stood nearby, guiding her gently. "You're doing well," he said, offering quiet encouragement. Emily felt a surge of confidence, realizing that she could contribute meaningfully, that she could navigate this unfamiliar world and succeed. Each completed task became a small victory, each acknowledgement from Oliver a moment of validation she had never known. The tension of their growing connection began to weave itself into their interactions. A glance lingered a moment too long. A shared smile spoke volumes. Emily found herself laughing more, her nervousness easing into moments of genuine comfort, and Oliver, despite his busy schedule, seemed to make space for her presence, subtly weaving her into his day in ways that were both professional and personal. We, the audience, can feel that quiet pull between them, the tension of two worlds colliding with warmth and curiosity. One evening, Oliver invited Emily to stay a little later to help with a small charity project he was managing. He led her to a quiet conference room filled with paperwork and plans for an upcoming event. "I wanted you to see this side of my work," he said softly, his tone personal yet professional. Emily studied the documents, impressed by his dedication. She noticed the care he put into planning, the thoughtfulness behind every decision. Here was a man of wealth and influence yet deeply committed to helping others. She felt her admiration grow, mingling with a spark of something more, a connection that went beyond words. As the evening sun dipped behind the London skyline, casting long shadows across the office, Emily and Oliver shared a quiet moment by the window. The city glimmered below, a mosaic of lights reflecting hope, ambition, and possibility. Emily's mind wandered briefly to the streets she had left behind. The cold, the hunger, the struggle, and she realized how far she had come. And now, in this unfamiliar but welcoming world, she felt a sense of belonging, a sense that perhaps she could navigate both worlds with honesty and courage intact. Yet beneath the warmth of this growing connection, Emily felt a subtle tension. She noticed Oliver Yee's focus occasionally drifting to phone calls and messages, reminders that he lived in a world far more complicated than her own. She wondered if the bond forming between them could withstand the challenges of status, expectation, and the unknown. Still, she clung to the small moments, shared smiles, quiet conversations, and the gentle reassurance of his respect. Each moment built a foundation, fragile but promising, for something deeper. The next morning, Emily arrived early, eager yet anxious. Oliver had left her a note inviting her to a morning coffee before the office opened fully. She followed the instructions, finding him already seated with a steaming cup of coffee in the quiet lobby. The soft hum of the building, the gentle glow of early light, created an intimate atmosphere. "Good morning," he said, his eyes warm. "I thought we could talk about the charity plans and perhaps a few new ideas." Emily smiled, grateful for the opportunity, feeling the subtle thrill of being valued beyond her role. As they discussed plans, the conversation naturally drifted to more personal topics, Emily's past, her dreams, and even her fears. She spoke openly, trusting the quiet kindness in Oliver's eyes, and he, in turn, shared small pieces of himself, the pressures of wealth, the isolation of expectation, and the rare moments of joy he found in helping others. Emily listened, fascinated not just by the details of his life, but by the vulnerability he displayed in sharing them. It was a side of him she had not expected, and it drew her closer, deepening the bond that was quietly growing between them. By mid-morning, the office had filled with activity, but the memory of their shared coffee lingered. Emily felt a sense of pride in her ability to navigate this world, her confidence quietly growing with each passing day. And Oliver, noticing her calm efficiency, felt a mix of admiration and something more, a feeling he could not yet name, but one that hinted at the heartwarming possibilities of connection between two unlikely people. The day moved forward with its usual rhythm, but the subtle romantic tension remained, unspoken yet palpable. A lingering glance, a quiet laugh shared over a minor mistake, and the soft acknowledgement of each other's presence created a delicate web of emotion. Emily found herself thinking of Oliver when she wasn't at the office, replaying moments of kindness and gentle encouragement. And Oliver, too, caught himself reflecting on her courage, her honesty, and the warmth she brought into his otherwise orderly life. As the sun set, casting golden hues across the city, Emily packed her bag and prepared to leave. Oliver walked with her to the elevator, their steps slow, their conversation casual, yet charged with the subtle energy of connection. "You've done exceptionally well," he said softly. "I hope you see what I see. Strength, honesty, and potential that is rare." Emily's cheeks warmed and she nodded, feeling a quiet joy that was almost overwhelming. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot," she replied, her voice soft but sincere. Back in the streets, Emily felt the contrast sharply. The cold, damp pavements, the muted sounds of the evening city, and the flickering lights reflecting in puddles. Yet, despite the chill, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with weather. It was the warmth of being recognized, valued, and slowly, quietly connected to someone who, in another life, she would have thought entirely out of reach. As she settled into her shelter that night, Emily reflected on the day. Her life had changed in small but meaningful ways. She had taken risks, embraced courage, and allowed herself to step into a world vastly different from her own. And yet, more than anything, she had felt connection. A quiet, burgeoning connection that promised hope, trust, and perhaps, in time, love. The city outside continued its rhythm, rain softly tapping against windows, cars moving in distant echoes, and the lights of London shining like tiny beacons of possibility. Emily Parker, once a woman defined by survival, London mornings were never predictable. On this particular day, the sky was heavy with clouds, the rain threatening but not yet falling. Emily Parker walked through the familiar streets, her coat slightly damp, her bag clutched tightly. The past few days in Oliver Bennett's office had changed her life. She was no longer just a homeless woman surviving day by day. She had a purpose, a routine, and a surprising connection to someone from a world she had never imagined. The office building rose before her, gleaming in the muted light. Emily took a deep breath, her mind buzzing. She had noticed subtle changes in Oliver lately. The way he looked at her more often, the little questions he asked about her opinions, the genuine concern he showed. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of tension beneath it all. She sensed there were parts of Oliver's life she didn't fully understand, parts that could complicate the bond quietly growing between them. As she stepped into the office, Oliver was already there. He looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. "Good morning, Emily," he said, his tone warm. Emily smiled back, her heart fluttering slightly. "Good morning, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous energy swirling inside her. The day began as usual, with Emily attending to small tasks, but there was an unspoken tension in the air, one that neither addressed but both felt keenly. By mid-morning, Emily found herself working closely with Oliver on a new charity project. For the first time, she felt fully involved in something that mattered. She noticed Oliver observing her, a faint smile on his lips, as if silently encouraging her. Each glance, each small acknowledgement made Emily's heart race. She tried to focus, telling herself she couldn't let personal feelings distract her. Yet the quiet connection was impossible to ignore. The tension escalated when a new face appeared. A woman named Catherine, introduced as Oliver's fiancée. Emily's heart sank. She hadn't anticipated this. Catherine was polished, confident, and clearly from a world of wealth. She greeted Emily politely, but with a hint of scrutiny in her eyes, as if assessing her worth. Emily smiled and nodded, but inside, a storm of uncertainty began to brew. Would this woman see her as nothing more than a temporary novelty, unworthy of Oliver's attention? Oliver noticed the subtle shift in Emily's demeanor. "Emily," he said quietly, "don't worry about Catherine. She's particular. Focus on your work, and everything will be fine." Emily nodded, but the unease lingered. She suddenly felt small, out of place in a world that had seemed warm just moments before. Catherine's presence cast a shadow, and Emily realized that the path to connection was not going to be simple. Throughout the day, Emily worked diligently, trying to ignore the tension. She noticed the way Catherine observed her, the subtle questioning glances, the faint but unmistakable judgment. Emily kept her head down, focused on completing tasks, yet every interaction felt weighted with unspoken scrutiny. It was clear a conflict was brewing, testing the fragile balance of admiration, curiosity, and growing tension. Later that afternoon, a misunderstanding arose. A document Emily had filed was missing, causing a minor delay. Catherine, observing, assumed Emily had made a careless mistake. "Perhaps you should be more careful," she said pointedly, her tone polite but sharp. Emily felt a flush of embarrassment and anxiety. She had done her best, yet her effort was misunderstood. Oliver, noticing the tension, intervened calmly. "It's all right, Emily. We'll sort it out together," he said gently, giving her a reassuring look. Despite Oliver's support, the misunderstanding lingered. Emily felt the weight of expectation, the fear of being judged for her background. She realized her journey was not just about a new job. It was about proving her worth in a world that measured value in wealth and status. Yet even in the face of this challenge, Emily's courage didn't falter. She focused on solving the problem, organizing the documents correctly, and ensuring the project continued smoothly. By the end of the day, Emily was exhausted but proud. She had navigated complex tasks, handled scrutiny with grace, and maintained her composure. As she prepared to leave, Oliver approached her. "You did very well today, despite the challenges," he said softly. Emily looked up, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Thank you, sir. I just want to do my best," she replied. Oliver studied her for a moment. "You have more strength and courage than most people I know, Emily. Remember that," he said quietly. A small warmth bloomed in her chest, a reassurance that her efforts were recognized. As Emily stepped into the London evening, a gentle rain began to fall. She pulled her coat tighter, walking through puddles that reflected the city lights. The rain, once harsh, now seemed almost cleansing, a symbol of change, of new beginnings, and of the quiet, growing bond between her and Oliver. That night, in her shelter, she reflected on the day. The tension with Catherine had been uncomfortable, but it had also revealed something important. This journey was about standing her ground and navigating the complexities of human relationships. She thought of Oliver's calm encouragement, his subtle admiration, and a sense of hope blossomed within her. The next morning brought clarity. Emily awoke determined to continue her work with diligence and integrity. She knew misunderstandings would arise, but she also knew the connection with Oliver was genuine, built on mutual respect and honesty. Back at the office, she dove into her work with renewed focus. She noticed subtle changes in Oliver, small gestures, lingering glances, and a quiet attentiveness that suggested he was increasingly aware of her value, not just as an employee, but as a person. The tension was building, the connection deepening despite external pressures. As the day progressed, Emily's confidence grew. She handled calls efficiently, managed documents carefully, and even suggested small improvements to the charity project. Oliver observed quietly, occasionally nodding in approval. Catherine, meanwhile, continued to scrutinize Emily, but her sharpness couldn't diminish Emily's quiet resilience. Each small victory reinforced Emily's sense of self-worth. By late afternoon, the office was bathed in golden light. Emily and Oliver found themselves sharing another quiet moment, reviewing plans for the charity event. The air was filled with a soft, charged energy, a mix of professional collaboration and subtle personal connection. Emily noticed the warmth in Oliver's expression, the way his eyes lingered just a fraction longer than necessary. She felt her own heart respond, a delicate flutter that suggested something more than admiration was blossoming. The suspense was palpable. Would this connection survive the challenges of status and expectation? Could Emily, a woman from the streets, navigate a world that judged people by wealth? And most importantly, could their growing bond endure jealousy and societal pressure? As the sun set, Emily prepared to leave. Oliver walked with her to the elevator, their steps slow and unhurried. "Remember, Emily," he said softly, "strength, courage, and honesty always matter. Never forget that." Emily nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She left the office, stepping once again into the rainy London streets, her mind alive with anticipation. That night, as the rain tapped against her window, she reflected. The challenges were all part of a journey that required courage and patience, and through it all, she felt a quiet, heartwarming connection forming with Oliver, a bond built not on wealth or appearances, but on honesty. The morning in London arrived quietly, the city wrapped in a soft golden haze as the sun struggled to pierce through lingering clouds. Emily Parker stepped onto the damp streets with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Today felt different. There was a weightless sense of possibility in the air, as if the city itself knew that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The envelope Oliver had given her weeks ago, now folded neatly in her bag, reminded her of the journey she had taken, from the cold streets to the warm offices, from uncertainty to courage, from isolation to connection. As she approached the sleek glass building of Oliver Bennett's office, Emily's heart beat faster. Each step was accompanied by memories of past days, moments of small victories, shared laughter, gentle encouragement, and the subtle, unspoken bond that had quietly grown between them. She entered the lobby where the receptionist greeted her with a familiar smile. "Mr. Bennett is expecting you," she said warmly. Emily nodded and took the elevator up, her reflection in the mirrored walls showing a mixture of hope, anxiety, and excitement. When she stepped out onto Oliver's floor, she was immediately aware of the calm energy that filled the space. Oliver stood near the large office window, gazing out at the city with his hands loosely folded. He turned as she approached, his face lighting up with a warm smile. "Good morning, Emily," he said, his tone carrying a gentle reassurance that made her chest swell. Emily smiled back, feeling a flutter of emotion she could hardly name. "Good morning, sir," she replied softly. Oliver led her to the small garden terrace behind the building. The rain from the previous day had left the foliage glistening, droplets catching the morning sunlight. The city buzzed softly in the background, a reminder of the world outside, but here, in this quiet space, time seemed to slow. They walked side by side, their steps synchronized in an easy rhythm, a silence that spoke volumes filling the space between them. Emily's mind raced with thoughts. Would this be another ordinary day, or would it mark a turning point in their journey together? Breaking the silence, Oliver spoke softly. "Emily, I wanted to ask you something. These past weeks I've noticed your courage, your honesty, and the way you navigate life despite challenges. You've inspired me in ways I didn't expect. I feel a connection with you that goes beyond work." Emily's breath caught. Her heart thumped so loudly she could feel it in her ears. She searched his eyes for truth, finding nothing but sincerity and admiration. A delicate warmth spread through her chest, the kind that comes from recognition, acceptance, and the stirring of something deeper than friendship. Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. She had experienced rejection, judgment, and disappointment for most of her life. But here was a man, wealthy, influential, and from a world she had only dreamed of, acknowledging her value, not for her appearance, her background, or her status, but for her courage, her honesty, and her heart. Slowly, she smiled, her eyes reflecting a mixture of vulnerability and trust. "Oliver, I feel it too," she whispered. The atmosphere shifted subtly, filled with gentle anticipation. Oliver took a careful step closer, the cityscape behind him a soft, shimmering backdrop. "Emily, I don't expect everything to be perfect. There are challenges ahead, differences between our worlds, and moments that may test us. But I want to explore this connection with patience, care, and honesty," he said, his voice steady and warm. Emily nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Not sadness, but relief, joy, and the quiet wonder of finally being seen and valued. Their bond had been nurtured through small moments, shared laughter over minor mistakes in the office, quiet tea breaks that allowed glimpses into each other's thoughts, and the subtle ways Oliver had made her feel comfortable despite the unfamiliarity of his world. Emily realized that love, she had learned, was not sudden or flashy. It grew quietly, persistently, and gently through understanding, trust, and shared humanity. Just then, Catherine entered the terrace, her presence poised and confident. Emily tensed, remembering the subtle friction of previous days. But instead of the judgment Emily had feared, Catherine's expression softened. She glanced at Emily, then at Oliver, and quietly nodded. "I see now," Catherine said, her voice even and calm. "Some bonds cannot be ignored, no matter how unexpected they are." Emily exhaled softly, a wave of relief washing over her. The tension that had shadowed her past days in the office lifted, replaced by a sense of acceptance and clarity. Oliver reached for Emily's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "We've faced challenges, misunderstandings, and differences," he said gently, "but I believe that honesty, courage, and heart can overcome almost anything, and I want to face it all. With you." Emily felt a warmth that seemed to light her from within. For the first time in her life, she felt secure not just in her place in the world, but in someone's heart. As they walked back into the office together, the city outside seemed to glow with possibility. Emily felt lighter, stronger, and more certain than she had ever felt. Each step was symbolic, not just toward the elevator, not just into Oliver's office, but toward a future she had dared to imagine, but never fully believed possible. The tension of previous trials dissolved, replaced by hope, trust, and the gentle excitement of love blooming between two very different worlds. Later that afternoon, Emily and Oliver returned to the charity project they had been planning together. They worked side by side, their collaboration flowing effortlessly. Emily suggested small improvements, and Oliver listened attentively, appreciating her insight. The partnership was no longer just professional. It had evolved into a relationship of mutual respect, trust, and deepening affection. Even the office staff noticed the subtle harmony between them, the way their teamwork carried a quiet energy of warmth and understanding. By evening, the city was bathed in a soft golden glow, the sun setting behind the London skyline. Emily stepped onto the terrace again, now a familiar place of reflection and connection. Oliver joined her, handing her a small cup of tea. "Two beginnings," he said softly. Emily smiled, feeling the full weight of the journey they had traveled together. From a cold street to a warm office, from hesitation to courage, from uncertainty to love. It was all here, in this quiet, heartwarming moment. The golden light reflected in their eyes as they spoke quietly about the future. Emily knew challenges would continue. Misunderstandings, societal expectations, and the differences in their worlds. But she also knew that they had built a foundation strong enough to face them. Love, she realized, was not about perfection. It was about honesty, trust, patience, and the willingness to stand together despite all odds. Later that evening, Emily returned to her shelter one last time, not out of necessity, but to gather her few belongings before starting a new chapter. She sat for a moment, looking at the city outside, reflecting on how far she had come. The streets that had once been her home now seemed like memories of courage and survival, stepping stones that had led her to this place of possibility and love. She folded the envelope Oliver had given her months ago, tucking it safely away, not as a symbol of charity, but as a reminder of how honesty and courage can open doors to unimaginable beginnings. The night fell gently over London, the city lights flickering like tiny stars, mirroring the glimmer of hope in Emily's heart. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but for the first time, she felt truly empowered. She had love, respect, and the knowledge that her heart, honesty, and courage mattered. There was a heartwarming closure to the story, a triumph of human spirit and connection, and the delicate beauty of a love story that had grown quietly but powerfully. The following morning, Emily entered the office not as a visitor, not as someone uncertain, but as a confident woman ready to embrace the future. Oliver greeted her with a soft smile, and for the first time, there was no tension, no hesitation, only a shared understanding of the bond they had built. Together, they faced the day, the city, and the possibilities of life with a quiet confidence and the unspoken promise of love that would endure. Their story had begun with a simple act of honesty, a wallet returned on a rainy London morning. And from that small, selfless act had grown courage, trust, understanding, and a connection that defied expectations. The trials, misunderstandings, and challenges had only strengthened the bond between Emily and Oliver, proving that love was not about wealth, status, or appearances, but about seeing, valuing, and supporting each other with honesty and care. As the story pans out, showing the streets of London glistening in the gentle morning light, Emily Parker and Oliver Bennett walk side by side, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, and a future filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities stretching out before them. This brings a profound sense of satisfaction, the gentle warmth of a story resolved, and the heartwarming truth that courage, honesty, and love can change lives forever. And so, the journey concludes. Emily Parker, once a homeless woman searching for survival, had found not only opportunity, but love, respect, and a place in a world she had never imagined. Oliver Bennett, once defined by wealth and expectation, had discovered a heart that matched his own, reminding him that the truest wealth is the connection between hearts willing to see, understand, and cherish each other. The story ends with a soft fade, the city lights glowing warmly and the rain-slicked streets reflecting the promise of a future where love, courage, and honesty reign supreme. A tale for the ages perfectly suited for hearts seeking hope, romance, and the beauty of human connection. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming content.